Rob Debbett here for Boxing News. Delighted to be joined by Shane McGuigan. We are in the immediate aftermath, well, not so immediate because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, following Chris Billam-Smith's majority decision win over Lawrence Okolie to become the WBO Cruiserweight Champion of the World. Shane, how does that sound?
So special. Shit. Yeah. Amazing. Just never thought it was going to be... Yeah, I never thought it was going to be that monumental if he did win a world title. The fact that he did it in front of 15,000 people at home against another British fighter that I'd trained for 3 years. It's just like, it's amazing. And finally, those two have done 300 rounds together. And yes, we've won, but I'm glad they got well paid for it, because a lot of the time they did a lot of those rounds for free.
We're going to jump straight into it. I've kind of asked you in the past about Chris on various different instances where him winning a world title would rank, and I appreciate it's very soon after the fact, 4 o'clock in the morning. Where does this rank, considering where Chris was when you took him, the journey that you've been on both inside the gym and outside the gym, and him becoming a world champion?
It's my proudest moment as a coach. It's my biggest achievement as a coach. I've trained a 2-weight world champion. I've trained a unified world champion. George becoming a world champion. Lawrence becoming a world champion. Daniel becoming the WBA regular champion. But this is the biggest one, by far, in my opinion. We've had some amazing wins, but this is just special. It's genuinely special. I mean, for a guy that came from the small hall shows, for trying to get trying to get on GB year after year, getting in the ABAs, getting beaten by Vidal Riley, Chevron Clark, Dion Juma, like the list goes on. Like, he just never could quite capitalize on his ability. He asked me time and time again if he could not just come down for sparring sessions off the cuff, but to actually join the gym. And I had a busy stable. I had Josh Taylor, Cut Frampton, George Groves, David Hay. I had other fighters as well. So big time fighters. And I looked at Chris and I thought, all right, he's not won many national titles. He's in boxing internationally. But what I liked about him is his personality, his will to learn and throw himself in, whether it was against David Hay or George Groves. He always just was there, was willing to learn. And, that shows that over the last, what was it, since 2015, November, so it'll be 8 years this November, that he's been coming to my gym. Obviously been there since 2017, June, I think it was. That consistency has compounded and made him a pretty damn good fighter. Someone that used to box on the back foot and now takes the fight to people. Dropped Lawrence Okolie twice, 3 times maybe?
3 times officially.
Yeah, 3 times officially. A couple of times legitimately, but definitely hurt him numerous times throughout the fight. Lawrence walked the amateurs and he walked the pros and he won a world title, and he has copious amounts of ability. But Chris Billam-Smith applies himself inside the ring, outside the ring, looks for the 1%. He's got a podcast called The Perfect Athlete, and that is the way he thinks about how he wants to be. And he's got people like my dad that always says that talent's overrated. And you can outdo it with hard work. And I genuinely believe he has a lot of talent, but he has a lot of hard work that's been put into it.
Let's talk about the fight. First 3 rounds of the fight, I think in kind of the general feeling at least, was that Lawrence won those first 3 rounds. Assess those first 3 rounds before, of course, we come on to the 4th round, which in many people's opinion, changed the fight. But the first
we didn't just change the fight. I mean, like, the first 3 rounds were always like, they were always going to be dangerous. Lawrence was out there to prove a point. Lawrence did a lot of change this week. He was trying to wear our gloves because he thought, I need to make an impact. He second guessed a lot of things this week, and I think he wanted to go out there. He wanted to knock Chris Billam-Smith out. He wanted to do it in front of all of those fans and steal them almost. That's the way he sees it. If you look at Lawrence's career, he's always had like maybe a bad fight, like a Chamberlain fight, or maybe another bad fight, but then bang, a good performance, bang, another good performance. And people are always going, oh, wait, he's just knocked out whoever, like Luke Watkins in devastating fashion, a few more other people. And then maybe a fight that looks a little bit messy, he might find something. But didn't look the best. I thought he looked pretty good, to be honest, against Seslak for 6 rounds. And then his knee went a little bit, but he just fell into his old patterns. And I was really frustrated with it. And then that David Light fight, he fell even more back into his old patterns. So we were preparing for the Lawrence Okolie that we knew in the gym, someone that snaps his jab, moves, he's got a bit of lateral movement, constantly twitching. And I think that's the best version of Lawrence. So we were preparing for that. But, it's I've gone off on a tangent here, but I just think, Chris has just capitalised on it. And, we got a good game plan, in place, but he executed it and lost the first 3, as we said, found that left hook, but it was always going to be the game plan to push the second half. Not like we're just going to give him the first 6, but to push the second half of the fight, because that is that's where we couldn't risk it early. We knew that Lawrence was dangerous early, and we knew that once he started leading in with his left hook or his bent arm shots, that was when we were going to catch him. But Chris did it a little bit sooner. Sorry, Mrs. is calling.
That's okay. It is 4 o'clock in the morning. Yep.
Our baby's about to be awake in about an hour and a half.
That's okay. We don't get to do this very often. But
people might think we're bloody drunk. I mean, you might be, but I've never had a sip of alcohol in my life.
I'm not drunk. Drunk on pizza, which is fine.
I'm drunk on Mackie D's.
There we go. But anyway, 4th round, the left hook.
Yep.
That dropped Lawrence Okolie heavily. Not seen Lawrence really hit as a pro, let alone hurt like that. How much of that was Chris kind of acting on the fly, and how much of that was drilled in the gym?
Left hook was drilled in the gym a lot. Lawrence has been hurt a little bit in the gym, and when he has been hurt in the gym, it's been by left hook. So that was a shot, and that's a shot that Chris found. I'm gutted he didn't find it again, to be honest. It was there the whole fight. Lawrence has a habit of when he misses on the jab, he dips down. And when he's dipping down, he's not shooting the right hand, so you may as well take that shot. But we drilled it, and he found it. It's just he kept looking for it to, he kept going big on the shot. He should have lifted it more. But we'll get that drilled in for the next time, or whether he executes it or just making him a better fighter. I thought his lateral movement was good. It was really hard to look good against Lawrence. But he was patient. He should have put a little bit more into certain rounds. That's why I think he gave away a lot of rounds, especially once, as you said, he gave away the first 2, maybe 3, caught him with that great shot. And then the next round, I think was Chris' round, but then he switched off and he just gave away a few rounds. And it was like, what are you doing? And then the second half, he was just calm with his attacks, but he could have let those flurries go a little bit more.
You mentioned, just while we're on the subject, the next one. I spoke to Lawrence after the fight. He said 100% he would be invoking his rematch clause. Is that any surprise to you?
No, I mean, he's brave, but I think Lawrence... look, I think Lawrence is a good lad, but I think he needs to take accountability for those fights. Do you know what I mean? He has to reflect on it and not just think like, he's going to get the win. I was just going to try and beat him. It's like, why are you falling into those patterns? There's something that there's something that's not clicking. and he needs to figure that out. I think we worked quite well when we were working together to try and, get rid of those default settings. But it's like anytime the fight is remotely competitive, he just goes back to it. So why is that the case? Personally, I think he should almost really take the next 6 months. I mean, he's just had back-to-back paydays. He should be fine for some like money and stuff like that. And I think he should maybe look to get some. Sorry, just wondering. He should look to try and. I don't know. I think he should go up to heavyweight, if you want my honest opinion. And I think he should look to get some momentum, maybe at a slightly lower level as a heavyweight, and get his faith in maintaining that gap. Because once he gets his shots going, and once he gets his jab and his 1-2s off, and maintains the range, like, he's really effective. And I think he will be effective up at heavyweight. I don't think he's effective at cruiserweight, because I think they're a little bit quicker, more nimble. And when he, I always said to him, like, Chris, you're not fighting the guy that was in our gym. And that's not saying that he's gone backwards with his new coach. It's when he gets himself down to that weight, he's not punching like he was in the gym, even with 18s on. He's a different fighter. And I've seen fighters in my gym that have been knocking guys out when they're heavy and they're sparring. But when they're dropping that weight down, I'm like, how are they not knocking these guys out? Because, they're doing it in the gym. They're doing it to bigger guys in the gym. And then getting them down there with the small gloves on, and that when they're weighing in and rehydrate, just something's off. And I've always thought that about Lawrence. I've always said, something's a little bit off. He's just not performing like he does in the gym. And I think that's just down to he's a natural heavyweight.
A lot of respect shown all week, really. I thought both sides of the promotion handled themselves very well, but not much more than after the fight. Saw you come into Lawrence's dressing room, and it was nice to see. A lot of mutual respect between you. Obviously, not working together anymore, and of course, having Chris just defeated him and taken his title.
I think that's the only way. The way to do it, really. I mean, I'll always show people the respect that they show me, and I think Chris is a very respectful lad. So I feel like they conducted themselves really well throughout this week. Lawrence and I, there's no hard feelings. Like, it was never a, we spoke a few times and we tried to make things work. And we said, look, mate, like, it's really not going to work on my side, and it's really not going to work on your side. So, like, maybe we just part ways. And I don't feel like that was a good decision for him. Not to say that I'm some bloody messiah. It's just more like, you got some good momentum going there, and it takes time to go to a new gym, to feel comfortable, set up, get a rapport with the trainer, and they might have a little bit of awe about them, but really, when you strip it back, it's like, do they understand me? Like, this is a selfish sport. Like, do they understand what I do well? Do they understand what I don't do well? Like, that synergy takes time to bond, really. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel like the respect was there the whole fight week, and I'm glad that I feel like Lawrence really conducted himself well in defeat, because, the referee, look, people were saying I was on it, but I stipulated it in the rules meeting. I stipulated it in the pre-fight instructions to Marcus McDonald. I said, look, Chris Billam-Smith versus Isaac Chamberlain was a great, clean fight. Lawrence Okolie versus Isaac Chamberlain was it was a very messy fight. Lawrence Okolie versus Chris Billam-Smith, it's going to be a very messy fight. There's a common denominator here. That's Lawrence Okolie. Like, you need to be aware of this. Chris is going to do his utmost to keep his hands on the inside. But when you got a 60 or 15 and a half stone lad by the time he's rehydrated, leaning on top of you, you're going to have to link or try and spin him. But he's not instigating those holds. So Marcus was good. He was fair. And I think, Lawrence needed a referee to be like that, because actually in the rounds 11 and 12, or whenever those later rounds were, he kept his range better. Yeah, 10 and 11. And he kept his range better, and that's like he's his own worst enemy sometimes.
Those rounds of 10 and 11, which ironically both were knockdowns for Chris Billam-Smith, some more legitimate than others, as we've already kind of discussed in the interview. But Chris had to walk through some fire. Was it just his night? Was it? I mean, we know he's got a great chin. We've seen against Richard Riakporhe and Vasyl Dutsar and you know, guy like Tommy McCarthy, you know, good loose puncher. But from where I was sat, some of the right hands that he walked through, certainly late in the fight, would have knocked out many, if not all, cruiserweights.
He's got a fantastic chin. Don't like him using it. Chris has a tendency to be a slow starter. Lawrence has a tendency to be a fast starter. So that was always my worry. You know, get through those early rounds. I knew that once Chris had gone into 4-5, Lawrence's punches get a little less snappy. He shows it a little. He's got a few telltale signs that we in the gym know that, okay, that's a shot coming. That's that shot coming. So you can see, like, he might switch it up head or body if he leans in with a left hook, but it's quite an obvious shot. So he fell into that pattern mid-rounds, and then actually he started getting on his 1-2s like late on in the fight, and Chris took a great right hand. I think it was in the 11th. But he was warmed into the fight. He's got a great chin. He's fit as a flea. So if he didn't get buzzed, but if he did get hurt at any stage, he was like, that fitness recovers you quick. Yeah, I felt like the shots were staying on Lawrence a little bit longer than they were staying on Chris.
What could have Chris done better in the fight?
Be more active. When he adjusted his feet, that's when he dropped him. He let Lawrence fall in, took a sort of side, and then as he stepped back, he went boom, left hook. And he'd done it a few times in that 4th round before he got the knockdown. In the first few, it was just ride them out basically. Then, you know, let Lawrence punch himself out a little bit. You know, you never want to use that as a tactic, but you know, to a certain degree. And then in the 4th round, he started to. Lawrence separates his 1-2, so we're like, okay, it's really hard to read. So like, if he's separating that 1-2, just make sure you're taking a side, or if you are stepping back, you're really shooting off. But but as the fight will go on, you'll find that range, so then you'll still be able to counter him afterwards. But he found it quite early, and he was sort of dropping, and then he went bang, left hook, or he caught him with a few shots before that, and then I thought, okay, he's starting to really read those patterns, and then obviously dropped him. But then after that, he went gung-ho, which is the right thing to do because you had him hurt, but you could have placed his shots a little bit better, could have adjusted his feet a little bit more. But, you know, I think we said in the post-fight press conference, he was not well on Monday. He wasn't well. He had a bit of a stomach bug. He thought he had a pathogen like a food response, but turns out that he actually got a little bit of a bug from his son when he went back that weekend just to see him. So, you know, his energy was a little bit down, but on Thursday he felt great. Friday he felt great, and obviously Saturday. But sometimes those things can, even though they're not prolonged, they can still stay on you a little bit. He said his energy was a bit flat.
Final one on the fight. One of the scorecards had the fight even at 112-112. Thoughts?
I couldn't see it that close, but like, I'm always pretty harsh, and I was thinking, like, Lawrence was getting shots off before he held, and sometimes I was thinking, Chris, you just lost that round. Just lost that round. Like, yes, there might have been a few points deducted, or yes, there's a few knockdowns, but you still just can't give away rounds because, you know, you're getting him to tire himself out. Like, you still got to be that bit busier. But you know, it's like Chris, when Lawrence was falling in a few times, like Marcus was jumping in straight away, and I feel like if he'd have left the action a tiny bit longer, that's when Chris is really effective. Like, the ref was jumping in, like, because he was getting frustrated himself. He was, oh, that's another clinch, jumping in. But really, when Lawrence was in this position, some of the best work that Chris was doing, he was going like right hand over the top, left hook, right uppercut. But then it was he was getting 2 of those shots off, but if he when they would spar, obviously I let them work a lot longer in there, and that's when Chris really gets his momentum going. So people might say, "Oh, the ref was on Chris's side," but really, the ref also stopped a lot of his great work. But look, he did his job and he did it well. Both the ref and Chris, obviously.
For argument's sake, let's say the rematch for whatever reason doesn't happen.
Yeah.
What next for Chris Billam-Smith? What would you like to see him do? I mean, I think it's fair to say he's already overachieved, with all due respect to him. What would you like to see next for him?
Overachieved. I mean, come on, Rob.
Do you not agree?
We've all overachieved, right? You've overachieved.
Definitely, yes.
I've overachieved, and so has Chris. The person that didn't overachieve is Luke Campbell, and he was in there tonight. And I said, "Do you know what, Luke? If you just turned pro a few years earlier, and I'd have got you to do featherweight, you'd have been a 3-weight world champion. If you'd had the right fights at the right time, he's such a fucking good fighter." But yeah, anyway. So what's next?
What for Chris if not the rematch? Proper
Look,
4 a.m. job this.
I mean, Ben Shalom and Sky Sports will obviously want Richard Riakporhe to box Chris Billam-Smith, but Lawrence is reasonably fresh. He's calling for a rematch. Richard Riakporhe hasn't taken any opportunities or pursued any world title fights. He might be pursuing them now, but what have you been doing for the last 2 years, 3 years? I know he's been building up his record and trying to go up the rankings, and I've got nothing against Richard Riakporhe, but I just don't feel like because he signed to Sky, he should justify himself a world title fight. Why aren't Chris was literally, he was ready to sign on the dot against Arsene Goulamirian, and then Arsene Goulamirian priced himself out. His manager kept asking for more money. They said, "Guys, we just can't afford him anymore." He would have signed against Jay Optea if Jay Optea's management. I mean, Jay Optea's manager came over for the Isaac Chamberlain fight, I think it was. He was literally ready to go, cool, let's get Chris Billam-Smith versus Jay Optea for the world title. Then he's had some disputes, obviously. Riakporhe was looking at Inlinga Makabu because he knew he was the easiest world champion. Why aren't you going after Goulamirian? Why weren't you going after Lawrence Okolie? It took Chris Billam-Smith to go and beat Lawrence Okolie for him to go "Oh, cool, yeah, sweet, I beat you in the first fight." Fight one of them. Do you know what I mean? Fight Lawrence or fight Goulamirian or fight Optea. You're not going to get the Badou Jack fight. Badou Jack's waiting for Canelo. And if he's waiting for Canelo, CBS should get the Canelo fight. I'm not even joking. We won't go to Guadalajara, we'll maybe go to Vegas, but yeah.
Can you get Canelo over to Bournemouth?
Absolutely not. He's a lot shorter than how can you get sparring partners for Canelo if you're Chris Billam-Smith?
You have to get a few middleweights in.
Get Boazzi in. Boazzi's good. He's really good work. And then a few middleweights for sure.
Okay, final one, because I appreciate it's late and you want to get back to your lovely partner and your son. You mentioned earlier on, and we've kind of talked around the point really about it being your biggest achievement, or certainly one of your biggest achievements, and the long road that you've been on with Chris, and not only yourself, but your dad, Barry, your brothers, Jake and Blaine. Mm-hmm. Just sum up, if you can, the journey with Chris from the start through the ups and the downs, in and out of the ring, and where you are now, and just your pride at him becoming your 5th world champion.
It is amazing. He is there's been we've been painted with this shit brush in boxing because it's run by a few people behind the scenes that create this narrative that a lot of viewers listen to. And Chris has been there through a lot of the shit. And a lot of people have been trying to whisper in his ear for years and years. And he has treated us the way we've treated him at face value. And I've really got to respect and commend him for that. I genuinely believe that we've helped him get his world title fight down here in Bournemouth. He's won, and he's kept winning, and he's kept disciplined. And when other fighters said, when we didn't have the Channel 5 deal, we said, don't worry, we're going to, just a bit like Mick Hennessy's got, for instance, don't worry, we know enough people in this industry, we're going to get you some good deals. Just give it a couple of weeks, out the door. Don't want to know. And Chris has just gone, cool, I'm staying with him. I'm going to stay there. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to dedicate myself. And he's just had his third fight as a headline on Sky Sports. He's just won a world title. He's been British, Commonwealth and European champion. And his dreams have become true. So I'm extremely thankful for him for being a great friend as well as a good fighter and a student. He's a fucking top, honestly, he's a top lad. He's got a great family. He's got a great wife, lovely little son. He's a little bit bigger and older than my son, so hopefully he doesn't bash him up, but Finley's got a solid head in him, so he'd give him a few back. But he's top lad. It means so much. And my brother Jake and my dad, they've done a great job, honestly. Like, they've done just a fantastic job. Dad as a mentor, he's not around as much as he's a bit sick of boxing. He comes in sporadically, but he's always a pioneering, pivotal voice, I should say. When fighters are a little bit down in the dumps in training camp, because it's hard. They're all sometimes feeling sorry for themselves because it's not easy grafting your body into tip top shape. And Jake has been working behind the scenes for years. We went into this week saying, do you know what? Like, win, lose or draw, like whatever the outcome, we may never ever get this again. We may never ever get an outside stadium fight. Never mind with with Chris. This is huge, and to do it with a guy that's been there for so long and he's so close to us as friends. It means the world. You've seen it the whole time. You've been here, but not so much, Ben. But you've seen it from the outside. I know. This guy's just a fucking groupie these days.
Thanks, Shane.
No worries, mate.
Okay.
You said you want some juicy stuff at 4 a.m. Do you know what I mean? You got some shit chat. I don't know how long it's been, but it's at least 30 minutes.
It's been pretty good. It hasn't been 30 minutes. So
the last time, we did, I remember doing the Josh Taylor versus Baranchek fight. We did a good one there at about 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And then I think we did Eubank after Eubank versus Groves. We did another good one quite late on. And everyone always thinks, I think I would look at some of the comments and I was like, Shane's pissed us apart. I'm like, mate, I've never drank in my life. I'm high on emotions, and
it's the post-fight adrenaline.
And I've got a croaky voice because I'm screaming all the time, but yeah.
Well, thanks very much for your time. Do appreciate it after a very busy, stressful and successful week for yourself and, of course, the new WBO Cruiserweight Champion of the World, Chris Billam-Smith. Congratulations on your 5th World Champion. And thanks, as always, for speaking to me and speaking to Boxing News. And we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Top man. Thanks, mate.